Drummers Universe.
So hello everybody at Drummers Universe. Welcome to another podcast episode here. We've got Derrick with us today from DDrums Academy, and he actually is based in a small town called Port Elizabeth out in South Africa. So we're going to be geeking out a lot today about the subject of teaching, about running clinics, and generally about drumming as well, because Derrick has a great background with playing in bands like Stray Talk, which he started just under a decade ago, but has been playing in bands all his life. And recently there's a band called Red that's like a jazz band. So he's got kind of a nice cross-section of styles that he plays with and performs with others live, and a strong background in music generally. And of course, as a teacher, he's got great results for his students with DDrums Academy, including the vast majority hitting merit and distinction on a regular basis with the Rock School syllabus. So if you're not privy to Rock School, they're just one of the main syllabuses that you can use as a teacher to help students get their grades and be prepared for higher level education and getting high level certificates and diplomas in their instrument. So it's a wonderful syllabus. Another one you may have heard of was Trinity. So Rock School is a very well-rounded syllabus and well worth checking out. So we'll be talking a little bit about that today as well. Another thing that's really interesting about what Derrick has been achieving out there in South Africa is he's been working with endorsers and with dealers, and the people that are working with people like Virgil Donati, Michael Shack, JP Bouvet, and people like that. He's managed to get into his to clinics over there in Port Elizabeth. So if you live near Port Elizabeth and you haven't been able to catch some of these guys in clinics, you definitely need to hit up Derrick and see if you can get in on one of these clinics, because it's quite hard sometimes to get somewhere local to you to go and see these people and get to meet them. And Rene Barton as well, who we interviewed here not that long ago, came down to visit you, didn't he? And
Yes.
And you mentioned Barry Van Zel as well, the vocalist. So
yeah. Barry Van Zel, he's a drummer that used to play for Johnny Clegg.
Oh, okay, right. I'm getting confused. Right, gotcha. And so endorsed by Dixon Drums as well, which we can see the beautiful T-shirt on today. So Dixon Drums are obviously fantastic creators as well, and not as often mentioned, so definitely worth us having a look at Dixon Drums today.
Yeah,
and a big fan of Veta Sticks, I hear as well, which Rene would be very happy about. Rene would approve. That's Rene approved.
He convinced me wholeheartedly.
And so look, it's wonderful to have you in today, Derrick. Thank you so much for joining us. Is there anything you want to mention before we begin our chat today about all things drums and teaching and all of that stuff?
No, let's shoot it away. Carry it on. Let's start. Let's get moving.
Okay, legend. So the first thing I wanted to ask you about really was more to do with teaching, because I'm quite interested. As you know, I'm a teacher too. I've been doing it for years. So we have had a few teachers in. We had Aaron Kennedy in recently as well, who's also a teacher. And I think it's really nice to talk about this subject, because there are a lot of teachers in the community too, but there's also a lot of students. And I think both sides of the equation benefit from those kinds of conversations. So I'd be interested to hear your kind of perspective as a teacher on what you have found to be methods and approaches that have helped you to get the best possible results from your students, and sort of tips you would give to other teachers or students in their educational process.
Well, when you start off with students, you've got to be so gentle. And I have to use the word gentle because you don't know, first of all, you don't know this person. So you actually need to know, you need to get to know the person first.
Yeah.
And I think what's very important is, like I said, get to know the person and teach them how to listen as well. Because I think the biggest issue with everything, basically, everybody wants to respond. They just want to give you an answer by just responding.
Yeah.
And that's the same way with music as well. And, they don't always listen. I see a lot of the students are with tablets or phones or laptops in front of them, and they actually don't use their hearing. They use their eyes to listen, which is the wrong thing to do. So listening is very important, and also myself listening to the student to get to know that student is very important as well. learning and also basically teach them how to manage their time as well. And not just timing on the kit itself, but also manage their time in the day. Because I find with the kids of today, they are extremely busy.
Yeah.
Well, not just the kids. I teach adults as well. So I deal from the ages of, say, 5, 6 years old, right up to 105. Okay, not that old, but no idea what I'm saying. So everybody's busy. Everybody's got busy lives. So I would say time management is one of the biggest issues in our modern day living is how to manage your time. Because practice for our instrument, practice is essential. That's the biggest thing. You have to be able to practice. You've got to put the time in. If you don't put the time in, you're not going to sound like you think you sound in your own head as a student.
Yeah, and when it comes to practice, like obviously putting the time in is important, and sometimes people underestimate the value of just aggression, and just being like, okay, I'm going to do 2 hours a day. I mean, it's reported, I know that Tony Williams, for example, I believe was doing at least 6 hours a day for at least 5 years. Alvin Jones was doing 4 hours a day for at least 5 or 6 years. At one point, it was like, I know Matt Gasker is reported as doing at least 8 hours a day for a period of roughly a period of 10 years. These guys have all done at some point some really, really hard work, where there's no, it's a non-negotiable. Like, I don't think that people underestimate that sometimes. I think, it's like they think that there's some kind of talent, God-given gift that people sometimes are just born into, and talent can be an influence, but you've got to put that work in, right? It's impossible to get there without it. But I do think strategy is so important in seeking coaching, and as in your case, what would you say from a I know that, I don't know if you ever checked out EPM by Benny Greb, but Effective Practicing for Musicians.
Yes,
if you check that out, so it's a great book. It's really, really valuable, and I know that Estepario Siberiano was talking about that at one point as well, and he's a big fan of that book. I checked it out myself, and it covers a lot of interesting ground on effective practice. Is there any, like, for you personally, when you're helping students out to be effective, to actually be strategic in it, what are some key pointers that you would make about being specifically effective in the way that you structure or approach practice?
Well, obviously, you've got to look at different methods, especially when you practice. We use practice pads on a daily basis. So we practice on the practice pad first and literally just basically looking at posture, fulcrum, how you hold your sticks, and what works for you as a student as well. Because some students, they like to use the German grip, some use the normal finger French. There we go. French. Couldn't come up with a name now.
It's just like, it happens like that, and it happens to me all the time in these scenarios. Don't worry.
Like, what?
I've got the names of some of my favorite drummers during podcasts. Like, honestly, it's happened to me so many times. Yeah. Don't worry. Just part of the story.
So it's all good to do with technique, and and that's about it. Obviously they've got to, just like I said, I've said it earlier on as well, got to put in the time. The other thing also, when I meet my students, let's say it's a new student, I always want to try and find out what music do they listen to, or why did they decide to do drums? Besides the fact that it makes them feel warm and fuzzy inside, who did they listen to? Who are the influences? Because obviously they want to sound like XYZ drummer, So it's very important to teach them how to listen to the songs as well, so that they can also try and figure out, besides the fact that I teach them how to play all the chops in the world that they can imagine to play, but also how to pay attention to the music
100%.
and getting key points from those songs and figuring out how to play the songs themselves. Because sometimes I teach them how to play the songs, but I'm not always there. They've got, because most of my students, in fact, all my students, they see me usually just once or twice, sometimes in a week. So they've got a whole 7-day week to practice. So if I'm not there, obviously they've got to help themselves as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting what you're saying there. It reminds me of a component of, I mean, this is something that I always go on about with students. So I say to them, if you are in our scenario as musicians, we're very fortunate because we actually get to work with the best in the industry at the touch of a button just by clicking whatever our streaming
Yeah.
service is. Like
Correct.
if you're learning football and you want to kick a ball around with Messi, good luck. You know, like he's not going to come. You know, you ring the phone and he's at the door in 5 minutes, like Domino's Pizza.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, right?
No, it's not
But
going to
you
happen.
can watch the TV and try to learn, and then go and apply that on the field. But that's not the same as kicking a ball around with one of the best.
Yeah.
And so the best that we can do is, if we're in sports, is go and be in clubs where we're surrounded by some of the best sports people that are possibly available in our local environment, and then graduate up until we get to the regionals and nationals, and then we start to
Yes.
really get around the best of the best. With
Yeah.
us as musicians, we, you know, because music's a language, and people forget that, you know, it doesn't matter how many grooves or fills you know, until you know where to use them, you don't really know how to speak the language. So, as you say, listening is so important. I mean, people underestimate that sometimes, how
Hmm.
powerful it can be to get in your heart, sit down and listen to an album beginning to end with total
Yeah.
focus. We're in a distracted world now, aren't we? So it's become
Definitely.
less of a focus. I think people put music on in the background, but we used to, like, I don't know about you, right? You know, you go and spend your tenner on a CD and just go and obsess over it for about 3 months, you
Yes.
know, until you could spend your money on the next one.
Yeah.
And
That's exactly how.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean that is listening. You know, it's that
Yeah.
repetitive, conscious presence with actually listening to everything that's going on and understanding that language properly, and then sitting down and jamming with them. Like, we
Yes.
literally get to jam with the best artists that ever existed. We just press
Definitely.
play. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, it's amazing. You see, this is the thing, and that's why the kids of today, or the younger generations, they've got it easier because they've got YouTube videos and all those types of things. But I still say listening to music is a far better way of learning whatever you want to learn, whatever song you might be learning, whatever genre. You have to listen to the music and actually literally paying attention, because I find that I don't know how it was in your day. Maybe when I'm a little bit older than you, but back in the day, before we had television in South Africa, we used to listen to radio, stories, and music. So when you listen to something, whether it's a song or a story, you actually formulate a picture in your mind, and you listen a lot more attentively as well. So I would say back in the day, the older generation, 50 and older, um, we listened to stuff, and we had to try and figure it out. I mean, I remember when I started out as well. Um, no internet, it didn't exist. LPs behind me, and make sure that the needle is on just at the right time, and then you wait until you can play along with the song.
Yeah,
So those
yeah,
are the days.
yeah.
And it has to be on a concrete floor, because if it's on a wooden floor, the needle's going to jump.
Yeah, that's I didn't have that problem, but I used to have cassette. That was our thing, you know. So
Yeah,
it's
the
literally be
cassettes were nice.
like, try again, try
Yes.
again. Like, you
I
know, so,
remember those days.
and then if it all goes wrong, you have to pull it out and pull out, you know, redo the tape again.
Oh
But
my word!
but
And then
that's
you
the
have to
thing.
get picked out or something, and
Yeah.
rewind it if it gets tangled.
Redo the tape again, reassemble it, go back in. I mean, the thing is, right? I mean, the kids have, you know, the younger generation have it easier, but they also have it harder because it's harder than ever now to stay focused, right? I mean, for us,
Well, the game,
if you had
they've
to go
got the
through that
game.
age of technology being low, you had to figure out those problems yourself. So you're forced to listen deeper because you don't have someone to explain it to you anywhere on YouTube. If it's, you know, if you didn't have someone there immediately, or, you know,
Yeah,
you'd have to wait to talk to someone or seek something out. And
yeah,
you know, so, and if you wanted to learn from some master level drummer, you had to go and buy a DVD, or you
yeah,
know, you struggle to find access to that person, you know,
yeah.
if they were globally recognized. These days you've got Virgil flying in, obviously, and people, you know, JP Pavey over to these masters. But the thing is, And that's one of the reasons why I say to people they've got to check out what you're doing there, because it's so amazing to be able to go and be in the room with people that are masters and actually sit down and have a
Definitely.
chat with them and find out what they think about stuff. So I love what you're doing out there in your academy as well. Just to point that
Yeah.
out. But yeah, it's I think for the kids it's so difficult that that they've got all these amazing opportunities for where they can spend their time and energy. That's really rewarding from a dopamine level. Computer games,
Yes.
YouTube, Facebook, whatever whatever they're allowed
Yeah.
to access, of course. But
Correct.
teenagers and the 20-year-olds too. Like we've grown up through a generation now where it's getting harder and harder. And I think even for those who lived through a time where we didn't have it, it's becoming harder for us too. I mean, if
True.
you're
True.
honest, do you sit down and listen to albums now the same way that you did when you were younger? I mean, you're obviously working a lot more now than you did when you were in your teens, but you know what I mean. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
honest, do you listen to albums and sit down and really listen to an album the same way now as you used to back then?
No, not at all. I remember I had the time. See, I had a
Yeah,
lot more time on my hands where I could listen to a whole album
yeah,
and then go back and listen to it again.
yeah,
Now, I've got tons and tons of CDs at my house
yeah,
that I bought when I was in my 20s. Now I rediscover those songs again. So lately, this is what I've been trying to do what I used to do when I was in my early 20s or even my teens,
yeah,
just to capture that special moments that I had music,
yeah, yeah,
because it's almost like it's a new relationship that you form with that album,
yeah,
and it's amazing. It gives you goosebumps when you think
yeah,
about it. That's the whole idea, is just to rekindle that youthfulness that I've lost. I would say I definitely lost it for about 10, 15 years,
yeah,
where I never used to get a chance to listen to my old favorite records like I used to.
yeah,
And lately, like I said, in the last couple of years, I've been listening to a lot of my old albums even stuff that I used to, that I played on as well with bands. And it's just nice to listen to all those songs, albums, whoever that inspired me as well. And then that also kind of like steer you in a different direction sometimes.
hmm,
Hence the bands that I'm involved with. I used to grow up with rock bands, and the older you get, um, you decide, wait a minute, I want to try what I used to listen to as a teenager, because I used to listen to
yeah,
rock.
yeah, yeah. So you come back around to something that you used to try and play when you were younger and see if you can have another stab at it. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct,
Yeah, yeah,
correct.
go.
That's the thing,
Yeah,
because when you're young, you listen to rock and all
yeah,
those different types of genres. I mean, grunge was like the big thing when
yeah,
in the 90s.
yeah,
But I also used to listen to guys like Dave Weckl and Steve
yeah,
Gadd. I was fortunate, I must say this, I was very fortunate, which is like I've got to pinch myself just thinking about it. I met Steve Gadd here in Port Elizabeth
oh, amazing.
when he came down with Paul Simon.
Oh, amazing.
And
Great.
then I met Michael Brecker as well, face to face. And that's also where my love for meeting people, trying to arrange drum clinics, because that's what we do, drum
Yeah,
clinics. We are drummers, but meeting people and to meet all these big names, and the people that inspire us to do what we do for a living.
yeah. I mean that's a really I didn't know that was part of what triggered your decision to do what you do. So
That
again,
was that was the big
it's
thing.
really lovely that experience led you to decide to contribute that to the people around you and give them that opportunity as
Yeah,
well. You know. Um,
yeah,
so as I mean, on that subject, I was going to ask you about this. Like, you run clinics and shows that have been very popular in your local town there. It's a little
yeah,
town, but you're getting in these huge names, right? And these really, really important people, and giving people that opportunity, where you are, which is
yeah.
wonderful. What do you think the secret is to running successful clinics and drum camps, and to helping to bring in, if someone out there in there where they are wanted to try to get some of these people over where they are to bring them to their community, what would you suggest to them, and how would you suggest, perhaps marketing these things as well to get people in so that they know what's going on?
First of all, you've got to know the right people. It's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
That's the big thing in this business. If you don't know the right people, who to talk to and who to try and convince to say, hey, I believe XYZ is coming to South Africa.
Yeah.
Please, can you consider Port Elizabeth as well?
That makes
You
sense.
know, I'm also at the mercy of those people, those key people that bring these artists into our country to say, look, yeah, I mean, hello, we will make it the best drum clinic ever. Because that's the thing. And I always say, because I will bring the numbers, I will bring the students, I'll make sure that all my students can try and support this. Because at the end of the day, the more we do that, the luckier we get, and the more bigger artists or more artists come to this little coastal town called Port Elizabeth.
Yeah, I love it.
So yeah, so basically, in a nutshell, it's who you know, and striking up conversations with them and say, all right, let's try and make this happen.
Yeah.
And planning, so much planning and so many phone calls, months, sometimes even up. Let me give you an example. When I found out that Mr. Virgil Donati will come to South Africa, I spoke to one key person. Thankfully, I was very grateful that he did let me know. And I said to him, look, we will make it happen. And that was a year before he actually arrived.
Right.
A whole year.
Wow. Yeah.
So it took a whole year to plan that drum clinic. And if I can remember correctly, I mean, I had, like I said, it's people that came, that crossed my path and they said, look, let's make this happen. One person was graciously saying, let's donate our venue. And we had a beautiful amphitheater. It's actually a church, but they do rent it out for shows and stuff. And I think it was about a 300-seater venue, beautiful, stunning seats, like a theater. We filled that place up.
Well done.
It was filled up, and then we had people like Lee Gold, which is one of our biggest local music shops here in Port Elizabeth and in East London. Okay, it's not far from here, but anyway, they said, we will make sure that we get the equipment ready. We'll have a bit of display in the foyer as well. So everybody got together, and it took a while to put it together. But like I said, it's all got to do with planning. So much planning. It's
well,
on the phone all the time.
So people don't always appreciate or understand the level of work that goes into those kinds of events. So that's really interesting to see behind the curtain a little bit, the kind of work that you've had to put in to make that available to people over there, which is amazing.
Yeah, I have sleepless nights sometimes,
really love it, right?
I love it. I get a kick out of it because it's for to the benefit of my students.
Yeah.
I can teach them everything that I know, but who wouldn't want to meet a celebrity drummer?
Yeah.
So that's great, I said when Renee Barton was here, it was one of the most fun drum clinics that we've had here in Port Elizabeth. I must say, we had so much fun. The music, everything. It was one of the greatest drum clinics that we've had in Port Elizabeth. So
Rennie's got a good heart. He is a fun guy.
Very fun guy.
Great sense of humor. Got a great sense of humor, Rennie. We had his anniversary of his time in Veta. I don't know if you've seen it, but we did a podcast on that not that long ago.
Yes.
We had a good chat with him about his journey. He's a very interesting guy and very passionate about the community, right?
Very.
So I want to steer this conversation towards some more about your expertise, just some stuff that will help people directly in their playing. So if you had to, and this kind of goes out, I guess, more to the people who are in the early stages or maybe in the middling stages of their journey as a drummer, and they're trying to figure out this journey to go from maybe 0 or maybe a plateau in the middling area, say, around grade 6 level sort of playing, or grade 5, how do I break into, how do I get to a stage where I feel highly proficient in the instrument? So if you had to start all over, but you could keep all your mental knowledge and your frameworks you currently have about education and drumming, what would you personally do to relearn drums? Like, if you could break it down into a few key stages, what would you be your process of approaching that now?
Yeah. When I was a younger person and I learned how to play the drums, there was no opportunities. We didn't have any opportunities as far as performing.
Mm.
Now, I'm going to mention this. I've got students, they just started out with me, let's say they've been with me for, say, 2, 3, 4 years. They kind of play, they know how to play. Let's say they're on grade 3, 4, 5. I create concerts for my students, and that gets them out of their shell, because there's nothing worse than just playing in your drum room at home
That's right.
and never be able to get out there in the world performing in front of the crowd. So, with my knowledge, I would say definitely now, what I'll do now literally is actually let my students perform a lot. Um, it will actually just encourage them to practice, obviously, a lot more as well, because that's the
Got that
big
set
key.
deadline.
But yeah, and then have a set goal, daily goal, weekly goal, monthly goal, and maybe say quarterly. Every let's say there's 4 terms, school terms. So I would say have a daily goal. Say, what do I want to learn from this song or this piece or this technical exercise, and work at it. And my motto, something that I always use is, I always say this to my students: plan your work and work your plan. So, and that comes in every day. You have to plan every day. Every day you've got to plan. What are you going to do next? Communication is also very key. I find that, and I'm using big words sometimes, but it is very important for them to understand that communication is key, so that I'm only a WhatsApp away, or a Telegram message away, or a phone call away to say, hi, Mr. D. Sometimes they call me Mr. D, sometimes they call me Uncle D, or Sir, or whatever, or Derrick. And they say, what do I do now? I'm stuck now. And then I'll say, well, you'll have to wait till the next lesson. No, I'm just kidding. No, but
What are you calling me for? No, no.
what are you going to do?
Is this your drum lesson? No, no. No,
You're not
no.
ready for this stuff. No, okay. No,
Yeah.
but in a nutshell, it's I'll basically then say to them, look, you've got to plan your day. So those are little key things: is the planning of your day, your daily planning, and communication. Because what's going to happen now with next week's lesson, I'm not going to know what he went through in the week. So now it's a good thing that he told me, or she, what they are going through with their skills. And then I can already mentally prepare myself also for the next lesson. And if I'm in a good mood, which is usually the case, then I'll make, sometimes what I do is I sometimes do videos for my students, and I say, look, it's not your lesson time, but here's a video of a quick demonstration of what you are struggling with.
Yeah.
That's the nice thing about technology as well. I also ask my students, that's point number 3, which ties in with the communication part as well, is to film themselves, and I say, okay, I see. This is now where you're going. This is where you've got a problem. And my mom, I'm going to mention this now. My partner, she says, "Gosh, you work 7 days a week, 24/7. When is it time for us?" But that's true, because I'm very passionate about what I do. And sometimes I'll sit on my phone and I'll check things out and I'll say, just hang on a second, I just want to check and see what the student says. You know, which is kind of annoying sometimes because sometimes you've got to try and switch off as well and have family time and, you know, but because of what I do, I always say, you know, if you do something that you love, you never work a day in your life.
Except for when you do admin, right?
Oh my word!
And taxes. I don't know if it's completely free of work, but it's definitely most of it's more enjoyable.
I hate admin. I'm not an administrative person. I hate it. It's not in me. I just cannot. It's not my forte.
Let me ask you this. So look, so what I'm taking from you so far is, if you were relearning drums from scratch, you would one of the things that you mentioned was regarding students, you said about communication, but you mean if you were starting again, you would make sure that you would communicate your when you have challenges and make sure you reach out for help. What did you mean by that topic specifically? If you were going through that process again as an individual,
Correct.
I just wanted to understand what you meant by that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, because I never had that opportunity when I was that age.
Yeah.
When I started with drums. I was fortunate. I had an older brother who's a drummer.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of mentors around me, which will tie in with influences as well just now. So luckily my dad and my mom were both in the kind of like in the music industry, more so my dad. The people that he worked with also influenced me as well. There's a few drummers there that I can mention as well. But it's so I wish I had that communication gap where I could easily phone one of those drummers and say, to one of my dad's drummers, for instance, and say, I'm struggling with this. What do I do?
So you would have made sure you sought mentorship. You would make sure that you sought coaching and that you had someone to talk with about any issues that you were having as you went along. And you mentioned you would record. So I guess what you're saying is you would record yourself. If you were starting again, you would record yourself and reflect regularly. Your first point, of course, was saying that you would be structured in your approach. You would make sure that you have plans and that you work your plan and you're consistent and organized in how you structure what your outcomes are. Is there anything else from the perspective of like what you would prioritize? So those are more strategic, right? Like how you would support your learning process.
Yeah.
What would you say from a actual learning point of view in application? Like what would you prioritize? Like for me, for example, if I went back, I would definitely have started integrating hand foot patterns in sooner. But I'm glad I worked on my hands a lot when I was young because it paid off massively for me, prioritizing my hands. If I didn't do that, I think it would have held me back a lot more but I would have started working double pedals and hand foot combinations in my journey so that I had that vocabulary available. How about yourself? Like how would you have prioritized your practice in different ways?
Yeah, I can definitely tie in with what you were saying for independence, definitely, because when I started out, we used to play in military bands. I don't know if you know cadet bands, basically.
Yeah, all snare.
Just snare. Yeah. And that was about it, you know?
Yeah.
And then obviously we used to
practice. It's a wonderful foundation in your
It's a wonderful foundation,
amazing,
but when you play kit, you know, you don't just play snare drum on a kit.
Yeah.
So I can definitely mention that I would definitely want to spend more time on four-way independence, using the feet as well. Whatever the hands can do, the feet should try and do as well.
Yeah, I think Famularo ended saying it exactly like that, and at one point he was mirroring hand down.
He's a huge influence. He's a huge influence. I must say. I must say, he's definitely one of
that guy. By a lot of people. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Really nice
brilliant guy. I mean, I'll mention there's quite a few other more influences as well that I can mention just now. But he's one of those top guys that I looked up to, and I couldn't get enough information from him. And that's why this is the thing. You know, back in the day, I didn't have that opportunity. to call my drum teacher. We didn't even have drum teachers per se back in the day. We just had a guy that knew some stuff, especially in high school as well. So it was very primitive to compare to today's standards.
Absolutely. And so what would you say? So we talked about this prior to the podcast as well. We were mentioning timing, for example. So I know that you said that later on, early in your journey as a drummer, someone was kind enough to come up to you and tell you to sort your timing out. Look, we've all had those humbling moments, right? I used to rush so much when I was gigging in the early stages. I didn't realize I was rushing, and then you listen to a video back and you're shocked, like, wow, I am rushing, because the adrenaline gets to you, especially when you're young and you're getting really pumped up for the show, and you're taking off like a rocket, and you're not aware that you're not listening to the spaces between notes, right? You're not aware that you're immersed in the feeling, you're having a great time, everyone's having a great time.
Yeah.
But you're not present to hear those spaces between notes anymore, and you're not recognizing that they're closing up, right? or whatever. So what would you so is there anything you would say change about your approach from the early phases of learning, that how you would have practiced differently maybe to address those things?
Practice with a metronome is very important, especially at a slower tempo.
Yeah. Like when you say slow though, how slow would you go, out of interest? Where would you have started around?
As slow as 40.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A lot of people don't consider below 60, do they? They're like 60 BPM. No. It's like, that's as slow as it gets, right?
No. Go as slow as you can go.
Yeah. Why would you go down to 40? Just to further confirm this for everybody listening. So I think I know why you would, but if you could break that down for the people who don't understand. Why would you ever go to 40 BPM?
It's because you've got to really count all those subdivisions.
Yeah.
Those subdivisions are going to get you to every downbeat, upbeat. So if you just want to thrash and you just want to play 120 or 160 BPMs, I'm sorry to say, you're going to struggle to play 40 like you cannot believe.
Yeah.
Because you're not used to counting all those subdivisions. So you have to be able to count those subdivisions. It's very important. I find also, just to bring something up, I look at a lot of drummers, and I see sometimes not to look down on anybody, but the whole idea is sometimes when you go and watch a live show, or you watch it on YouTube or somebody's gig, maybe it's a fellow friend drummer or whatever, and I listen to them and I hear they play maybe say a slow 6/8 or whatever, and I can feel, okay, it's going faster and faster and faster. It's fine if there's a slight intonation of speed, maybe in a chorus, but the majority is you try and keep it as steady as possible, especially if it's a dance band.
Yeah.
But okay, so the point that I want to make is yes, practice with the metronome as slow as you can, get say 40 BPMs, and try and count all those subdivisions while you're playing, and just submerge yourself in the slow tempo. And it depends what groove you're practicing. It could be anything from 6/8 to 4/4 or whatever,
Agreed. And it's interesting that a lot of us are probably, I know I personally would have been thinking before, well, when am I ever going to play a 40 BPM song? But that's not the point. It's obviously most of the time we're going to be playing 120. But you're trying to practice timing, right? So you can't zero in on that skill set without slowing it down so much that you can hear everything you're doing. It's harder to maintain the spaces between notes when it's so open and actually have more control. So it's like taking off the training wheels, isn't it? You don't have as much support. Clicks are further apart. You have to start doing more of the work of hearing the spaces between notes and how far apart they are. You can get granular about that because you really know, like, whether you know what I mean. You can really hear when you're in and when you're out at 40 BPM, and you can hear. You have time to think about what you're doing too, which is great.
Yeah. I must say, somebody that really pointed that out to me is a guy by the name of George Boros. Also, I've got a huge respect for George Boris as well. I don't know if you know George Boris. He lives in the UK now. I'm not exactly sure where he lives in the UK, but in fact, he'll thank me if I do this. If you can get your hands on this book,
Amazing.
this is a great
Rhythm
book.
of the
I've
Head.
been Rhythm of the Head. It's a brilliant book. I mean, it's highly regarded by Virgil Donati. Virgil Donati also uses his book.
Right.
Who else was here? Mark Mondesier. I don't know if you know Mark Mondesier. And who else? Bill Bruford. But anyway,
Good old Bill Bruford. He was a
yeah,
big influence on me, Bill Bruford.
yeah.
I loved his
So
work with King Crimson.
yeah.
Great albums.
Funny enough, I was watching an interview with Danny Carey
Yeah.
and Tony Levin
Yeah.
and Steve Vai. I forgot the fourth guy's name. They started something now recently.
Oh, really?
I don't know if yes, check it out.
Oh,
Rick Beato mentioned something. Oh, it's on his channel, Rick
I know
Beato's
he
channel.
interviewed. He interviewed Danny Carey recently. It was a really cool interview, actually. You got to, if you haven't seen that
Yeah,
Rick Beato interview with Danny Carey, it's well worth sitting down and.
I've seen it
It's a
already.
great convo. Yeah, there's some. It's really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
You can see how humble Danny is as well in his nature. He's such a down to earth individual and
Very.
just so just natural, and just
Yeah.
doesn't, he's not
There's no
pretentious.
airs and graces
Really,
about it
really lovely
now.
guy. Always, so many of us are big fans of Danny's work, obviously, So
Yeah.
it's great hearing someone like that, just having a nice chat with someone like Rick, So
Correct. Yeah.
you know what? It's interesting what you mentioned there, because you see that I looked at that title of that book, and I think I studied with Dave DeCenzo for a couple of years. I don't know if you know Dave
Okay.
DeCenzo is, but he's just
No.
recently. Well, he's a Berkeley professor who wrote. He's got a couple of books out. One is there's 3 books out actually now, but the second one in the collection was Rhythm and Drumming Demystified, and the last one got right here. Let's grab this a second. Bear with me a minute. Got to get under the library here a second. So this is another one that he did. So I studied with Dave for a bit, and he was the one who. This is the one that got nominated for modern drummer recently.
Oh wow. Okay. I must check it out.
I got him to send this one out for me in postage. It
Oh,
cost like
awesome.
90 quid to get this book. I think it was something like 60 quid or something to get this book out. It's one of my prized possessions. Dave's such a lovely guy, but he talks about the above the neck discipline. So I figure maybe he's read the same book, or maybe he had. I don't know. I haven't asked Dave about that.
Get my glasses out.
But Dave is the first person who switched me on to playing at like 30 BPM. When you're doing 30-second notes and stuff like this. And it's people like Dave and I assume Rich Boris. I don't know his work myself. It just has such good groove. Like it's palpable, like Steve Gadd level. You just want to do this, and you're just and it's like you can't fake that.
You can't beat it. No.
You can't fake it. You can't just make that happen through guesswork. You have to put the specific work in to sound like that and to make it feel that good.
Definitely.
And so when guys like that turn around and tell you to slow down to 40 BPM, you should probably listen. So I just want to further confirm Derrick's very great advice. That you want to groove.
Yeah, because you don't get songs that slow, but it's all about the subdivisions that you've got to embrace it. Otherwise, you're just going to run away from the rest of the band, and the rest of the band's going to say, "Whoa, I can't follow you. I just cannot follow you." Or the lyricist, the singer might say, "Well, I can't get all the words in."
Yeah.
The
worst thing is the guitarist when they're playing guitar solos too, right? Especially if they've written one and it's particularly advanced because they're like trying to really push themselves, and then you raise the tempo by 10 BPM or 15 BPM, you've just basically stopped them from having their shining moment, whether you mean to or not. You've prevented them from an opportunity to feel comfortable enough to be able to demonstrate that solo at a level that they feel really happy with, and they can enjoy that moment thoroughly.
Yeah, definitely.
There's so many reasons why it's important to learn how to make sure you're in control of your time, and it's
Yeah.
not just our primary job. I think it was Gavin Harrison that said it's not our job to keep time. It's everybody's job to keep time, but it's our job to make the time interesting. You know,
Yeah.
I
Yes,
thought
that's
I
very
thought that
well
was a
said.
really cool quote. You know,
That's very cool.
yeah,
Yeah.
Gavin Harrison's another absolute legend, isn't he?
Yeah.
You know, we need Gavin down there. Gavin's such a good guy. You got to get him out to South Africa
We
one of these
had
days.
David Harrison in South
Yeah.
Africa, but he never came to Port Elizabeth.
Didn't get him yet.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, it's
he bypassed Port Elizabeth. I wasn't quick enough actually to
Gotcha.
say, look, we want Gavin Harrison, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, yeah, I was
Maybe
just
next
not
time.
quick enough. Yeah. Well, I hope so. It would be nice.
Yeah, Gavin's a very great educator as well, right? He's not just a great player. He knows how to break things down really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you know, I love some of your points. You know, is there anything else you would add to this concept of starting all over? Is there anything that you oh yeah, another thing you said was you would play live. You would want to play live more, I guess. You
Yes.
would try to take opportunities to play live.
Yeah.
And set yourself outcomes and goals that involve performance to push
Yes.
yourself, keep yourself accountable.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would have changed about your journey from the beginning, or just to summarize this one or wrap it up?
No, that's about it. You know, because like I said, with my students, I create concerts.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm pulling a rabbit out of my hat now, but I do try and create planned concerts for the year.
Yeah.
So that they've got a platform and something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Because now they're going to perform in front of their family and friends and whoever.
That's right.
And it's actually not to boost myself or anything, but we do it quite professionally as well, you know, with lights and the whole 9 yards, you know, so it's proper, everything's like mic'd up, and then they obviously perform with a click track.
Yeah.
And sometimes I use some of the rock school songs that they can use, because I don't know if you know, rock school, they've got their own written songs, their rock school songs, and then they've got popular songs.
Some covers one, yeah.
And then they make use of those songs so that they can actually perform with those tracks.
Yeah.
Which is a great opportunity for them to get some experience.
It's very important. I did the same when I was in England. As we discussed, I'm now in Spain now. I still teach all my students from England via Zoom, but
yeah,
I've run concerts for them too, and recording sessions.
Oh, okay,
Getting them in to record as well, so they can share these records with their friends and family, which I highly recommend. If you've never tried that, give it a go, because it's really fun for the students, right? But the live performances on a stage, it's just such a transformational experience for students. And I think one of the students, I had to really coax her into it. She really didn't want to do it on the day. And so you're there to help them, support them through that process, right? And then they're like, and then they get up and they have this wild time and they're like changed by it, because I think as a teacher, if you don't prioritize helping your students to perform at some point or another, you're missing a trick where you can kind of like support them through that process of transition from being someone who feels like they're a drummer who does it for fun, as someone like they can actually genuinely contribute to people around them with this skill set they've gained. And it's such a beautiful time too, right? I ended up taking the money. What we did is we did a little thing where it was a minor payment going, and then I just put all the proceeds to the students, so they just basically they got paid for their first gig, right? So it's like, I mean, they paid drum lessons, so it's like, you know, but it's just like it was a tiny fee. It was like nothing, but it was just like just to be able to go, hey, here's your gig money, you know.
That's a great feeling, I must say.
Yeah. But it's honestly, I love what you're doing, because it's so important. A lot of teachers are doing their best. There's a lot of work to do, and it's a lot of but it's not a ton of work to run a show like that, right? Because you just getting the parents to come along, and then it turns into a pretty standard large audience the moment you've got all the parents and their families, and it's just a wonderful experience for them, for the kids. It's a bit more work for us as teachers, but you know, but it's not paid for, but it's like it's a wonderful way to give back to the people that you serve, right?
Yes. No, look, I mean, it's a game. It's a team effort as well. I don't just do everything all on my own. I've got my partner, I've got my son. My son even gets involved.
Oh, that's lovely.
But
that's lovely.
Oh, yeah.
A little family effort there. It's just, kudos to your family there for how they support you. It's amazing.
Also, I sometimes like I get some of the music shops to get involved.
Yeah.
The venues sometimes where we do our shows. The one I can particularly call is or mention is the Music Kitchen.
Yeah.
It's a venue here in Port Elizabeth. They cater for a lot of live acts, live bands. And when the students hear, oh, the Music Kitchen, oh my word, really? Are we going to perform there?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
You see,
amazing.
so they already know because mom and dad or the grannies or whoever, the family, they go to watch live shows at this venue. So now when I arrange something like that, that's also like, wow, I didn't know that I would be able to perform on that stage of one of my favorite drummers that I saw maybe earlier in the year.
Yeah.
So
That's
they
amazing.
are performing on the same stage as what some of our local and some international, but mainly local South African artists perform on.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you give them that new that you give them a
Oh,
genuine experience. That was life changing for me. I don't know about if you remember your first ever gig, the first time you played properly in front of people, but
definitely.
you can never forget it, right? For me it was I was a 15-year-old lad still at secondary school, and my big brother was in a band called DNA, which was like a rock covers band that was very successful in the local circuit. And
Okay.
so I'm still doing my GCSEs, which is General Secondary Certificate of Education. For those
Yeah.
who don't know, basically middle school, whatever, just before you
Yeah.
go to advanced studies. So I'm like 15 years old. I'm sat here in a pub where you're allowed to sit with adults as long as you don't have alcohol at that time. And I don't, it's not so common anymore. And they were talking about getting me in the
That's
band, and I was like, wow, this is crazy. I might actually end up playing with a full proper covers, but proper rock band while
yeah.
I'm. And I'm sat here in the venue, and they just called me up, and they were like, no prior rehearsal. They were like,
Come on, word.
so be prepared, guys. Like, get everything, like, learn all the songs because you never know when someone's going to call you up to just play a song.
Correct.
And they were like, you're
Correct.
going to come up and play song two. And I was like, okay. So thankfully, I didn't play that song at home, but I'd heard it on the radio loads of times.
Yeah.
But I'd been used to jamming music all the time. I was always jamming, like
Yes.
you said, listen,
Yes.
play the music all the time because that means you got more faculties, more
Yes.
resources to draw from in a clinch situation like this, and you can use your ears to guide you, right? If you have to
Yes.
read, I think you mentioned reading with your eyes. Like if you have to read with your
Yes.
eyes all the time, you listen with your eyes. Sorry, then
Yeah.
obviously we read with your eyes. I don't know that. I like to listen with my ears. I actually do because I love Audible, but I won't get into that. Anyway, so I'd much rather listen with my ears, to be honest. So I
Yes.
read with my ears. So I'm getting my senses all mixed up here. So but yeah, basically, if you're constantly using books all the time to reinforce your ability to play music, you're
Yeah.
losing to some degree your ability to use your ears as a guiding force in the communication, right?
Definitely. Yes.
So all of that jamming I used to do, I used to spend every time I'd play through my practice, I'd spend an equal amount of time playing albums, just jamming my
Yeah.
favorite records
Correct.
by ear and just trying to get
Yeah.
it comfortable.
Listening.
Yeah.
Use your ears.
Yeah, exactly. And so for as much time as I'd spent reading out of books, I was spending the same amount of time just playing and just listening to the best in the world and trying to keep up. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but then when that time came up, I was kind of prepared in a way that had come from that kind of approach. So anyone listening, I'd highly recommend like what Derrick was saying about listening to music regularly, jamming to music regularly.
Yeah.
Those opportunities will be much more stressful if you haven't been doing that kind of work. If you've been
Yes.
really putting a lot of time into that, you won't
Yeah.
feel
Yeah. It's
so.
all about.
I mean, my hands were like tingling, everything was tingling, but I was
Yeah.
ready. So when we hit
Yeah.
that first note, the roof blew up and everyone was going crazy, and you just like you're changed forever, aren't you? Like the moment you
Yeah.
have that level of
Totally different. It's
yeah,
almost like an out of body experience.
yes,
You've got to
yes,
really feel like, am
yeah,
I really? Is this really
yeah,
happening? Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
You can't.
It's the most wonderful feeling in this on this planet.
It's an amazing thing that you give into your students by
Yeah.
running that because
I don't think
yeah,
many people will realize how great of a feeling that is when you're in that situation.
yeah,
You've worked for say X amount of years, and now all of a sudden, boom, there we go. Now you're
yeah,
on stage. Now you have to really perform.
yeah,
But all those senses, everything that you taught yourself and that you were taught, it all kicks in Sometimes it doesn't, but I would say most of the times.
Yeah, I mean, even if you hit like 80%, if you've overqualified yourself, you'll be
Yeah,
fine, right? So
yeah,
I
yeah,
think in the
yeah.
end, it's always about giving yourself more practice than you need so that you at your 80%, you're still everything's covered. I think
Yeah.
I can't remember where I heard that story actually. I think it was John Riley, that talked about a story of one of his favorite
Okay.
guys that he was chatting with outside of a bar. I can't remember who it was that he was talking to now, off the top of my head. But yeah, that's such a core component of professionalism, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's if you've got a gig coming up, guys, and especially if it's your first gig, just practice that thing till you don't even have to think anymore. You could be
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
You should actually practice so much that you can not make mistakes. You've got to
yeah,
literally practice until you know that song or all the songs, the set or whatever, how many songs you ever have to play. You've got to know those songs inside out.
yeah, by ear.
You don't actually
Yeah,
you shouldn't be thinking. You should just be enjoying the moment.
that's right.
That's one thing that I must say. Who was it? Simon Phillips.
Yeah,
He mentioned something also in an interview where obviously because they write sometimes complex songs and when they have practiced so many years or whatever, then they perform in front of say 20, 30,000 people, then they can actually enjoy the moment of all the fruits of their labor, and
yeah.
actually see how the crowd is enjoying it and how the band is interacting with one another and actually just know exactly at a split second what's going to happen next. You don't think about it, it just happens.
That's so true. It's ultimately, I was talking to students about this recently, where it's a combination of a habit of installing what you're learning to a degree that you can get back into your heart. Because when you're thinking about what you're doing, you're up in your head, you're not feeling
No,
what you're doing. You're thinking about it. Okay, partially feeling maybe, but not all. More, some of that processing power is now being distributed up here for you to anticipate what has to come next to try to control your next step, right? Exactly. And
yeah,
we don't want to be stuck in our head when we're playing music. We need to be able to feel what's going on so we can use
correct.
all of our intuition. And then some of our processing power can be for the thinking, but that will be then more about unrelated problem solving that may come up. Like the bass player may
Yeah,
break a string and you have to suddenly change on a dime, or you need to be able to react, and
yeah,
if you haven't properly rehearsed yourself into a place where it's almost boring, um,
yes,
you know,
yes.
like, then you may not feel like you have the resources left over to actually deal with those random
Yeah,
scenarios, right? Um,
yeah,
but I mean, I think the most important thing of all of that is the ability to truly feel and be present in your heart with the music that you play, because then
yeah,
it really comes alive, especially when you're in a room full of other people feeling it too.
yes,
It just gets
definitely.
amplified, doesn't it? It's hard to
Yeah,
explain that.
it does. It does. It does. Yeah, that's why you've got to be wide awake and just appreciate the moment, live
Yeah,
in the moment, and don't overthink.
yeah,
I also say sometimes to my students, look, we've done whatever we needed to do to learn
yeah.
XYZ technical exercise. Now, just enjoy what you have learned.
So agreed.
Obviously, you will make mistakes as you carry on,
Yeah,
but try and appreciate the exercise for what it is, and then try, and then also not just playing it on one drum, but actually orchestrate it on the whole kit and just
yeah.
explore.
Oh, so true. Yeah, I mean, so what one thing I wanted to add to what you just said earlier is it is so important before you go on stage to have a mini ritual that gets you out of your head and into the present
Yeah,
moment. I mean, I used to when I
yeah,
was going gigging, in sort of in competitions. Occasionally we did competitions and stuff like that. You
yeah,
sometimes have, way back in the day, like going back a couple of decades ago, we did this local competition, we ended up winning, and it's like you just before you go on stage you get, I don't know, it affects you differently when it's something like that. It's different than playing a
yeah,
gig.
yeah,
um
yeah. It
but
is.
it doesn't affect you if you have a pre-game ritual. Like if you just sit down and go, right, I'm gonna warm up my wrists, I'll do my pad work, I mean, I know that Danny Carey talks about with Rick Beato that he used to sit down and play rudimental studies on a pad
Yeah,
for at least 10 or 15 minutes before he did anything else to make sure he didn't injure himself, so he could, because he
yes,
really hits the drums, right? So
he does. Yeah,
warming up your limbs and your wrists and everything before you play is crucial, but also
yeah,
warming up your how you feel. So for me, at one point it was Stacked Actors by the Foo Fighters. I would sit down and just play because it's a nice dynamic change. You know, you're going from this kind of bossa nova light feeling, and then suddenly it's like,
Yeah.
no, no, and he starts screaming at you. So, as Dave does. So it's like but the dynamic shift is so vibey for me back then. I really felt I could just connect to my heart and really feel it and just kind of get into the music.
Yeah.
But I know that Steve Gadd also used to do, before he would go in for recording sessions, he used to listen to a click and sing subdivisions. So, I mean,
Yes.
do you have any of rituals that you teach in your students, or rituals you use yourself prior to like getting up on stage? Are there certain little things that you've done? I mean, maybe it's just pad practice. I don't know. Like, what do you tend to do to warm up your mind and body before you play?
I actually do. Okay. Well, obviously, if I have a set gig, um, whether it can be a wedding, it can be a pub gig, it can be a big show. It depends what the gig wants you to play, But I go through the songs, not all the songs, but I would say the stuff that maybe I might not know that well, although I've been practicing. But there might be some of the stuff that I might say, okay, what am I not 100% sure of, or what do I feel like I need to just, you know, know it as such.
Yeah.
Even though I know it off by heart, but then that's when the head takes control of your body. And that's why I say, all right, you know what? AirPods, practice pad behind stage, and just go and practice some exercises, or depending on the song, because it depends what gig I'm doing as well. If it's say a gig where I play say 40 songs in that one gig, because that's usually the case. I mean, I'm sure you can test for it as well. Sometimes you play 40, 50 songs in one gig.
Yeah.
You probably know 99% of those songs, but there's always that one or two songs that you think like, what am I going to do with that song? I know the song, but there's that fear in me. Yeah, so sometimes you just go over that, but the majority of the times I would just sit behind stage or outside, wherever, and have my practice pad and just do some warm-up exercises. Nothing too fancy, maybe say 5 to 10 minutes just to warm up. And depending on also if it's summertime, that's another thing. Because we've got a physical instrument, so dehydration,
Oh yeah.
stay hydrated, drinking not alcohol, water.
Yeah. Alcohol isn't very good for
the worst
hydration.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a diuretic, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want to keep the water in the body.
Yes.
Ideally,
Water in the bottle. And if it's summertime, you don't have to use too many warm-up exercises because your body is already kind of like warmed up, especially if your own roadie. You've already had some warm-ups by picking up the stuff and clotting it and setting it up and tuning it in and putting up cymbals in the whole 9 yards. But at the end of the day, if it's winter time, then I warm up a little bit longer, maybe say 10, 15 minutes or 20 minutes even. And it can be anything from basic single strokes to double strokes, doesn't matter. Anything, paradiddles, triplets, you name it. Anything that I can think of at the time. I go through stages as well. I always, when I teach my students rudimental exercises, I say to them, okay, so that is now something that you're working on today or this year or this week. And that's going to be your favorite exercise. And then one of these days, you're going to be using that because you know it so well. You're going to maybe start using that as your warm-up exercise. Mm-hmm. So you learn new technical exercises, but it becomes your warm-up exercise eventually. But yeah, that's about it with regards to warm-up and before gigs and any show. That's about it.
We're about to wrap up this podcast now, and before we go, there's a couple of things I just want to go over with you. Yeah. Just wrap up. So first of all, of course, anyone here who's been watching so far, they may want to come to one of these drum camps. They may want to reach out to you about joining your academy and getting the opportunity to play these great venues locally and join in with your academy and get one-to-one lessons and join the journey. How would they get in touch with you, and how would how would they get to one of these drum camps?
Well, there's a couple of places that they can get hold of me. There's usually on Facebook. I think Facebook is probably one of the biggest ones that they can get hold of me on.
Where do they
I'm
look you up? Is it your
they've
personal
got to look
profile,
up,
or is there a page that they should go
yeah,
to?
they've got to look up Derrick DDrums Badenhorst. Such a long surname, but anyway. And then
So
they can get hold of me on Instagram, um, WhatsApp. I can send you my WhatsApp number, and then they can look up there or whatever. That's
so
about it.
your have you got a URL specifically, like or anything like that, or because if not, then I just want to make sure people get the right spelling of Derrick D Drums Badenhorst.
Yeah, I don't have a website at all. I
Okay,
don't even have a website, but
that's fair
they
enough.
can just
That's fair enough.
yeah.
Yeah. That just goes to show, ladies and gentlemen, you can still run an academy without a website. Apparently, there you go. So Derek, you don't need. So I think sometimes people overestimate the importance of the internet. Like it's not that the internet isn't fantastic and useful and very valuable in many ways, but ultimately it's not the be all and end all. Like we can still talk to each other.
Yeah,
Word of mouth works. There's still
yeah,
other ways of making things like this work.
yeah.
But so Derek is spelled DERRICK. Then it's D drums, which is just D, the letter D, and then drums. And then Badenhorst is Badenhorst. So
Correct.
Baden. So make sure
Yeah.
if you spell that out right, you should be able to find him, no problem. Um, so Derek, as we wrap up this call, it's been great fun chatting with you. I've had a lot of laughs.
Wonderful chat to you.
It's always wonderful talking with someone who's passionate about teaching as well, because obviously that's a big passion of mine too. So it's
Yes.
been really wonderful geeking out with you about these kinds of topics, because it lights me up as well. So I hope everybody that's been listening has got a lot of value from the time spent listening to us garble on about our geeky passion to teaching, and have got some values, things they can readily apply to the drum set. But I thought what would be really
Yeah.
fun, just to wrap up this call, would you like to give a brief first introduction to anyone who's maybe thinking about starting drums, because they might be in Drummers Universe and thinking I might want to start lessons. I'm actually in South Africa. I'm not that far from you. Is there
Yeah.
anything you want to share with someone who might be a potential drummer to come and just to sort of get them started or get them thinking about moving towards playing some drums today or in this week, and then before they reach out to you, just like a little something they can try at home to get moving? What might you do in a first lesson, or what might you do to get someone moving on the journey?
Well, as I say, I always ask my students what do they like to, who are their favorite artists.
Yeah.
I sometimes even ask questions before I see the student say, or I might be speaking to a parent, and then the parent will say, "Oh, my son or my daughter, they like X, Y, Z band or whatever." Then
Yeah.
I might prepare something for them, or I might even know this the artist or the band. And then when they arrive, then I'll say, "Okay, I believe you like whoever. Here's a song. I just want to play something to you." And then sometimes they actually feel a little bit intimidated. It depends on the band. It might be such a hectic band that they will say, "Oh gosh, I didn't know you could do that, but I didn't know that's so difficult." Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, not too long ago, I had a student, a brand new student. He was mentioning something about the Foo Fighters, and I said to him, "Well, look, I mean, what song? Name a song, whatever. Pick a song. All My Love." So, and then
What a
I played
go-to.
All My Love, and he was blown away, and he was like, "Oh my word, I didn't know." And he actually experienced it here in the classroom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he realized that, oh, okay, it's doable. You
Yeah.
know, he hears it, but it's doable. The
Yeah.
guy, Derek, is doing it in front of me. So
Yeah.
that's sometimes what I do. I just play some of the songs. But yeah,
And in the first lesson, what would you? I know there's sort of go-tos and stuff, but obviously someone's trying to learn their favorite music.
yeah,
So I guess you probably take them by the hand and start deconstructing the basic approaches to those
limb
songs so they
for
can
limb.
start moving forward. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, limb for
And
limb.
if
Yeah,
someone didn't have any favorite music in mind necessarily, or like they were just starting from scratch and wanted to do something, because you and I both know there's like a 1% of vocabulary that will be played like 90% of the time, and then there's like 10% that will get played 80% of the time. But there's always that
Yeah.
tiny, like singles and doubles everywhere, right? Basic rock
Yeah.
grooves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Is there anything you would recommend? I mean, you've got a drum set in front of you. I mean, if you want to, or show us anything, you're welcome to. But is there anything that you would encourage someone to try starting now, in this journey, just to begin, just to begin drums?
Yeah. The basic things are literally just playing a straightforward groove.
Yeah,
It can be anything, So yeah, I mean, when I sit behind the kit, I usually say to them, I explain to them the parts of the drums, and I explain to them, I say to them,
yeah,
your kick drum, your bass drum, and your hi-hats and your snare, those are the three most key elements of your drum set.
yeah.
And as long as you can keep a beat, downbeat on the one, snare drum on the second beat, it's easy. Just
Start
try and
jamming.
play. That's very
Yeah.
simple.
Yeah.
Especially, it depends how old they are,
Yeah.
Some of the kids or some of the older students, I've got adult students as well, they might have been dabbling behind the drum set for a couple of years. So they have kind of like self-taught already.
Yeah.
So they know what they want to do and how to do it. So they say, no, let's try tool song. or
Let's go. Yeah.
let's go. So then I'll say, all right.
I love it when a
song?
student comes in with that question though, because I'm like, okay, we're gonna go far. Like,
Yeah.
you're loving those kinds of drummers already. Like, goodness me, you've got some challenging heroes already to follow.
What's nice about it is that my students, especially my older teenagers and the older, mostly the older students,
Yeah.
it's nice for them to challenge me. I like to be challenged because it keeps me on my toes.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, as you said earlier, you play jazz, so you've been in that band Red doing it for a couple of years now. So I assume you teach jazz. You teach all styles.
All styles, yes.
Yeah.
All styles.
Brazilian,
Anything reggae, metal, the works.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge metal fan. I must say, I'm not a big metal drummer at all.
But you can get someone going.
I can help myself, but with regards to the majority of the music, it's mainly rock, pop, jazz, fusion, funk.
I think
reggae.
that's important in the early stages. Like, unless you're 100% set, you want to be a metal drummer, and even then, like, you need to go through someone like Derrick to get a start. But if you want to, then you might want to seek out someone who's just a world-class metal player, who's in a world-class metal teacher.
Exactly.
But for most people, you're going to get more work, you're going to get more opportunities by having the foundational knowledge of rock and reggae and punk music and funk and all of that stuff. I mean, that's going to
there's a market for every style, so that's why I try my best to learn everything that I can, but there are specialists out there.
Yeah, but you've got that generalistic approach. I think is really, really important as a door opener for anyone, so that you can really, because obviously to get through grades as well, you need that. When you get to grade 8, you need that diverse knowledge. By the time you get to grade 8 rock school, I think I remember you doing the Latin studies, you're doing double bass, you're doing Latin studies, and you're doing chart reading with Latin and jazz and fusion and all
different time signatures, odd meters, everything, the whole 9 yards.
I tend to teach from Trinity, but I've got a few students who do rock school, and they're great syllabuses. It's so thorough.
Yeah.
You get you've got rudimental studies, you've got chart reading studies, you've got all of this stuff built into it, which is school do a really good job. I think they're kind of like a more reminiscent of how Trinity's Guildhall system used to be, which was that you've got listening exercises, all of that stuff as well, haven't you?
Yeah.
So it's a great syllabus that Derrick's teaching, and if you get through all of that kind of material, you've got yourself in a position where you've built a lot of the fundamental skills you need to be able to take a lot of gigs. So,
yes. Look, I've got students that are now not my students anymore. That are living in Los Angeles, that are living in the UK, and they are full-time musicians. So I'm doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's such a wonderful experience, I think, as a teacher, to see your student take off like that and go and do something really valuable with what they learned, isn't it?
Yeah. I get a kick out of it. It's a beautiful thing.
I've got a few that have gone in the same direction, but I've been teaching just over a decade now, so I know that you've probably been teaching longer than me. So I'm hopeful in seeing quite a few of my young lads. I've got a young lad at the moment who's thinking about joining Young Drummer of the Year
Oh wow,
competition
okay, that's
this
awesome.
year. So that like, it's but ultimately, what's really interesting, and you'll probably share this opinion, is that I've got students who will probably never want to go down that road as a focus, but they will always find music to be like one of the most satisfying areas of their life. Like if they come home from a
Yeah,
bad day, they can just go to the drum set and take it out on the
yeah,
kit and and just get back into a really positive space again by playing some music they love. Um,
yeah.
but
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I've got maybe a small handful, if I say small handful,
Yeah,
probably two
yeah,
from all the years that I've taught. I've had only two students that never wanted to perform,
yeah. It's rare,
never
but it
wanted
happens.
to
Yeah,
perform at all. They
yeah,
just did their examinations every year, and that was
yeah,
it. And the examinations were also kind of like a difficult one to get them to do, but obviously because they're doing it as a subject,
yeah,
they in school. It depends, if they are doing it as a subject in school.
yeah,
Um, that was kind of like a struggle for me as well to try and convince them. Look, I'm going to perform in front of a panel of judges, and
yeah,
I will be one of them maybe or not.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. Absolutely.
but
And
the
so
majority they actually take it further and they either carry on till you know
I think
in their
it's good for people to know that they don't have to join those shows that you would present them with. I mean,
no,
you're going to
yeah,
give them
yeah,
the
yeah,
choice, right? So that I mean, if they
yeah,
want
yeah.
to
They
spend
still go
the
by
rest of
choice.
their lives just jamming at home, that's their choice to
Yeah,
make. And yeah, but and some people that's just what they want it for. It just
yeah,
ends up being their way of their outlet, their positive outlet,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is wonderful.
Drumming is a wonderful instrument because it teaches you a lot of things. That I always say a lot of the students they don't realize how much they learn about themselves
Yeah,
until they actually start drumming.
yeah,
And it's not just teaching them just the skill, but there's all sorts of other things that you discover
yeah,
over the amount of years.
agreed.
Um,
Totally
yeah.
agreed. Well, you know what? We've gone a little bit over today on this podcast, so we're gonna have to wrap up because it's been it's. I think I could talk with you a lot longer, Derek, and it would just get out of control. So
Probably.
I'm gonna have to draw a line somewhere, or we're gonna be here for the next 3 hours, and I'm pretty sure you got other things to do today. So, because I know that you work very hard. This is one of my days off, so I believe looking at the sign behind you, I know you're at school right now, so you probably got some more people to see today. So thank you so much for your time, Derek. Thanks for coming in to see us
Pleasure.
at Drummers Universe. My hope is that anyone who's been watching this today will have got a large amount of value from just watching, from listening and joining us in this conversation. But if you do feel like, especially if you're local to Derek in where he lives, Port Elizabeth, right, in
That's
South
right. Yeah.
Africa, or reasonably local, give this man, hit
Well,
this
I do
man up.
online lessons as well.
Online lessons as well. There you go. So
Yeah.
give Derek a call. Like, just check. You've now got the name of his profile. So again, that's Derrick DDrums Badenhorst, right? Yeah, Derek.
Correct.
Derek with an I instead of an E on the end, right? So
Yes.
DERRICK Badenhorst,
ICK.
BADENHORST. Go and check this guy out and catch up with him. Thanks for coming in with us, Derek, and I look forward to seeing you again in the Drummers universe in some
Yes.
form or another.
Yes.
All right,
We'll keep in touch.
all right, my friend. Thank
It's
you.
great chatting to you.
You too.